Good evening, everyone. The Person County Board of Education is now in session. We do have a quorum present this evening with Board Member Harriet Tillett joining us virtually this evening. At this time, we will stand for a moment of silence and the pledge of allegiance being led by Mrs. Brackett.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, and a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, we have no one who has signed up for public comment. And at this time, Dr. Peterson, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. During the December board meeting of every year, this is when y'all typically have your organization meeting by board policy. This is a time that, as a board, y'all elect a chair and vice chair. And what I propose doing is me facilitate the chair election, and then once the chair has been approved, then we'll let the chair facilitate the vice chair election. So at this time, I'll open the floor for nominations for chair.
I nominate Frida Tillman.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Tillman.
Any other nominations? Do I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
So moved.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor, if we can do roll call vote to close nominations. Ms. Bratcher,
Margaret Bratcher, aye.
Ms. Tillett,
Aye.
Ms. Tillman,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis,
Aye.
and Mr. Torian.
Aye.
Congratulations, Ms. Tillman.
So, well, you close nominations.
Oh, close. All right. At this time, do we have a motion on the floor to have Ms. Tillman be the chair? Right. Yeah. There we go. Officially.
So moved.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
I got a second. Roll call vote. Ms. Bratcher,
aye.
Ms. Tillett,
Aye.
Ms. Tillman,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis, Mr. Torian.
Aye.
Congratulations again. There you go.
All right, next item on the agenda is the election of the vice chair. At this time, I take a nomination for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Philip Gillis.
All right, Philip Gillis. Is there another nomination? All right, hearing none, at this time, I entertain a motion to close the, on the one said name of Vice Chair Philip Gillis. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
A roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I'm waiting everybody. We're gonna do by roll call. Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis,
Aye.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett.
Aye.
All right. So the motion has been approved. So this time we do the vote. All right, Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett,
Aye.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis.
Aye.
All right, by unanimous consent, board member vice chair will be Philip Gillis. All right, Dr. Peterson, congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's all I got.
All right, are there any adjustments to the agenda this evening?
No, ma'am. You need to do approval of the minutes, though.
Oh, okay. Oh, we did just skip that. didn't we? All right, everybody's had the opportunity to review the minutes for November 17th. Were there any noted corrections? Hearing none, this time I entertain a motion to approve the minutes for November the 17th, 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, we will vote by roll call. Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett,
Aye.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis.
Aye.
The minutes from November 17th have been approved. And there are no adjustments to the agenda. So our next item is Pride in Person. Mrs. Scruggs. Oh, is it you?
Good evening.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to be with you in December 2022. Tonight I bring before you several celebrations within our midst. The first is Mr. Marcus Crawley. Mr. Crawley, would you come up, please? Mr. Crawley began with us this fall as a bus driver, and on his very first day driving the bus for Oak Lane Elementary School, there was, I believe she's in kindergartner, got choked on a Skittle. Very first day, and so he responded appropriately, quickly, and even though it's just a little Skittle, potentially saved this child's life. And so we just want to celebrate him and just thank him, and just thank bus drivers in general. Mr. Crawley is a first responder as well as a firefighter for his main job, and so we're just thankful to have him a part of our team, and thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You are
Yeah, so if you just stand right here for a second. Board members, if you would come into the middle for me.
You want me to pull you around to the side, Ms. Chilton?
Somebody can hold up the, hold up.
Congratulations.
Thank you so
You can be
much.
the new.
That was a heck of a first date.
I have Miss Tillett in the back anyway.
Okay, good.
One more time. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
That's okay. All right. Next up, we have celebrations of 4 of our principals, 3 of which are here this evening. We've received EVOS Growth Index for each school, and these 4 schools shown brighter, very bright in North Carolina. So every school in North Carolina that is able or eligible to receive an EVOS score, these 3 of them scored in the top 50%, which is definitely well worth recognition. So last year, South Elementary, which was led by Mr. Patrick Holmes, was in the top 50% of all schools based on statewide performance placement on the EVOS. So congratulations and thank you. All right. Next up, Mr. Dusty Martin from Stories Creek Elementary. Stories Creek performed in the top 50%. Miss Nell Sidnor, leading North Elementary, was also in the top 50%, but she's not able to be with us this evening. And last but not least, in the top 15% of all schools that were eligible, Dr. Melody Wilson, leading Southern Middle School.
If y'all would stand right there. Hold up your certificates for me too, please. One more time. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? Last week I received the school growth certificates, and I'm trying to figure out how we're going to celebrate schools, because I think it is a big deal for our schools that have met and exceeded growth, and I want all of you to be a part of it. So once we figure that out, how I can get all of y'all in a space with the schools, then we'll let you know that. But I do have those on my desk. So, a lot to celebrate, absolutely.
All right, next item on the agenda is administrative reports and recommendations. Dr. Peterson.
Last
Board again.
last month, y'all got the fall update on your board policies, and I received no questions on the current policies that are in play. As such, I recommend the board approve the policies 1A through W.
Hearing there is no one has entertained any concerns, is there a motion to approve policy 183W as presented?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by roll call. Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett.
Oh, she's gone
Lost her
out.
sign.
Aye.
There we go.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis.
Aye.
By majority vote, the board policies are approved as presented. Dr. Anthony, Peace and Advisory Committee. Nominee,
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
how you doing?
Board members, Dr. Peterson, we have another member that has been recommended to the Peaceful Board Advisory Committee. Ms. Johnson has received the information, reviewed it, and she has nominated Ms. Chastity Compton. So we go through the process, and Ms. Compton is accepted if it's the board's will.
Yes, okay. Any questions, concerns? At this time, I entertain a motion to approve Chastity Compton to the Parent Advisory for Peaceful as presented.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by roll call. Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett,
Aye.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis.
Aye.
Aye by majority vote, and nominee has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the virtual academy. Instruction accountability, Ms. Leggett.
Hi, good evening. So the Virtual Academy School Improvement Plan is coming back to you again as a formality. Because this is their first year using the NC STAR platform, we were required to bring you an initial plan, put it out for feedback, and then bring the final plan. The focus areas remain the same. A 4.01 focuses on MTSS. C 2.01 focuses on data-based decision making. And then E 1.06 is a focus on clear communication. Any questions?
Are there any questions concerning? Mrs. Tillett, you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay. All right, this time we entertain a motion to approve the the Virtual Academy School Improvement Plan. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett,
Aye.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis.
Aye.
By majority vote, the school improvement plan for the Virtual Academy is approved. Thank you. Financial services.
Good evening. This evening I have Dale Smith here with Anderson, Smith and White to present the board's fiscal year end June 30, 2022 financial audit. So I'm going to ask him to come up and I'm going to give each of you an audit look while he's coming up.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Peterson.
Good evening.
Good to see you all again.
And this is the same, this is just a hard copy of what's in your
I
documents.
think each of you already provided a PDF copy of the report if you had time to look over it. And I'll be going over just a few pages out of the report this evening. The report covers two primary areas. You've got a financial section that covers the first 58 pages of the report. And you've got a compliance section that starts on page 59. And for the financial section, if you would, let's turn to page 13, and we'll look at the district's fund balance in the general fund after June 30th. And while you're turning there, I'd just quickly point out that on pages 1 through 3 of the report is the financial statement opinion letter, and that is a clean, unmodified opinion, which is exactly what the board wants to receive on the financial section. Okay, and on page 13, you've got the balance sheet of the governmental funds as of June 30th, 2022. And we'll be focusing on the first column, which is your general fund. And if you look up at the top, at June 30th, the district had cash and cash equivalents of $2,035,543. And that comprised the majority of assets, which were $2,088,343. There in the middle of the page, you had liabilities of $288,883. And your assets minus liabilities gives you the district's fund balance at June 30th, which is the next to last number in that first column, $1,799,460. And that fund balance represents a decrease of $376,000 from the amount that was reported in the previous year. And included in that decrease was a transfer from the general fund to the capital outlay fund of $400,000. So, you know, net of that transfer, you added around $25,000 to fund balance. So, overall, not bad. In the prior year, the district reported an increase in fund balance of about $545,000. So, if you look at the past 2 years combined, the district has reported a net increase in fund balance of about $169,000. And most of the districts that we audited this year and last year saw their local fund balances go up, primarily due to the receipt of all the COVID funding that y'all been getting. They've just been able to save some local fund balance just in the use of some of those COVID funds. And with all of the uncertainty in the economy right now, with the minimum wage increases, rising healthcare, retirement costs, utility costs, we think it's a good idea for districts to try to build up their fund balances right now for when those COVID funds expire in the next couple of years. The district did budget $595,000 of fund balance to balance the current year budget, the 22-23 year budget. And I think of that amount, around $400,000 was for potential pension spiking liabilities, and the other $195,000 is for recurring expenditures. So the district's current unassigned fund balance is at what we would consider an adequate level for a district this size, but we would recommend trying to not let it go much lower than where it is right now. Y'all are currently at $1,151,660. And that's around 10.9% of your general fund expenditures. And that's normally the metric that you look at, is what is your fund balance as a percentage of your local expenditures. And you really don't want it to go much below that. So, you know, going forward, we would just recommend that you try to not balance future budgets using fund balance if at all possible. Because you do want to save some fund balance and have cash reserves in the bank. You know, just for cash flow reasons and just in case some kind of an emergency comes up and you need to have that money to fall back on. Anyone have any questions on the general fund? And if you read across on that fund balance line, you'll notice the state public school fund and the federal grants fund, they both show zero fund balance, which that's what all districts show. Y'all spend those dollars in the year that you receive them. Your restricted grants fund has an ending fund balance of $1,320,001, and most of the revenues that flow through this fund are from grants and other restricted sources. So the majority of that fund balance is restricted. And the capital outlay fund had an ending fund balance of $209,668, and that fund balance is restricted for capital outlay purposes. And individual schools combined had an ending fund balance of $351,648. So again, I think overall the governmental fund balances are, you know, at a good adequate level compared to other districts that we audit. Any questions on this page before we move on? All right, let's turn to page 57 and we'll look at the school food service program. And this schedule shows the revenues and the expenditures of this program for the year ended June 30th, 2022. And if you look about 3/4 of the way down, the last line that has 3 columns to it, in the middle, it's the net change in fund balance line. You can see the program reported a profit for the year of $649,485. And in the previous year, it reported a loss of about $161,000. So this represents a year-over-year improvement in profit of $811,000, which is good to see. And the improvement in profitability over the prior year is primarily due to an increase in food sales and revenue from USDA reimbursements, which is primarily as a result of an increase in meals served and also an increase in the USDA reimbursement rate last year. I think the USDA reimbursed at a little bit higher rate than they had in the prior year. The program has good cash balance reserves at year end of about $1.5 million at June 30th, 2022. And I'd say the program is probably in about the best financial condition that it's been in recent years. Most districts we audit, they did see their child nutrition programs do well last year for those same reasons that y'all's did well. The 100% federal reimbursement and the higher reimbursement rate. But since the state is no longer reimbursing at 100% in this current year, we're just warning boards that you might not see increases like that in the current year, and that you just need to keep an eye on expenditures and just try to monitor the program a little more closely. But again, overall, the program's in very good financial shape at June 30th. Any questions on this page? Okay. And the compliance section starts on page 59. And starting on page 59 is the first of 3 letters that we issued relating to the compliance testing over internal controls and the board, state, and federal grant awards that it receives. And we're happy to report that all 3 of these letters are clean, unmodified reports, which means there were no internal control weaknesses, no findings, and no question costs reported in any of those letters. And we also issued a couple of separate letters that you should have received. I think I put those in the front cover. The management letter is the 1-page letter on our letterhead. It's the first one. And as part of the audit, we do analyze the district's internal controls of the various financial processes. And we did note one area pertaining to teacher certifications where we felt controls could be strengthened. And this area is summarized in this letter, and we've already gone over this item with management, and it's our understanding that steps have been taken to address this so that hopefully it won't be an issue going forward. And I think that item's pretty straightforward. Did anyone have any specific questions on that? And then the other letter that we issued that's on our letterhead is what we call a required communications letter. And it's the 3-page letter. And it discusses that there were no difficulties or disagreements encountered in dealing with management during the audit. No uncorrected misstatements were noted. And there were no significant reportable issues noted during the audit. And this letter basically has boilerplate language and is considered a clean report. So that's pretty much all I had planned to cover out of the report. And I think overall, the district is in good financial condition as of year end. The audit went very smoothly. I think Ms. Maston and her staff, they continue to do an excellent job of managing the finances of the district, trying to maximize the state and federal dollars. They've done a very good job of that. Pretty much all I plan to cover. Is there anything I didn't go over that y'all wanted me to touch on?
Any questions concerning it? Sounds good. We do want thank you reloaded. Yes, ma'am.
I have 15.
All right, well, thank y'all.
Thank you. This is for information only, so there's no action need to be taken on this. All right. Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Mr. Clayton? Got HVAC contract?
Yes, ma'am. Board members, Madam Chair, Dr. Peterson, I'd like to bring a contract before you tonight, Person High School HVAC replacement contract. This is to obtain approval for the contract agreement with Comfort System USA for the replacement of HVAC replacement at Person High School. The background is the equipment, all the equipment is over 20 years old and needs to be replaced. The financial impact is $2.74 million, and it is a recommendation from the staff that the Board of Ed approve the HVAC replacement at Person High School.
And just a reminder, this is funds that have been approved already through your COVID money, your ESSER money. I think it was 6.7 or something like that. So this is not coming out of your operating budget. This is money already been assigned.
Are there any additional information or questions for Mr. Clayton? All right, hearing none at this time, I entertain a motion to approve the HVAC replacement contract for Person High School is presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Mrs. Bratcher,
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett,
Aye.
Mr. Torian,
Aye.
Mr. Gillis. By majority vote, the replacement contract is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, before we go into closed session, would it be okay if Ms. Stacy came up and gave an update on retention efforts with staff?
Yes.
So as far as, so retention recruiting, altogether, one of the, big concerns this year, of course, are the vacancies that we've had, and the turnover that we've already experienced, up to this point in the year, with it only being December. However, the staff has worked, administration, district, and, school level. One of the things, we did transition to an applicant tracking system. I have seen more applications coming through. That has been definitely a positive for the recruitment. Internal transfers, we have made several internal transfers. Typically, how we used to do it in old times, we typically do not transfer laterally during the school year. But we've had to make some adjustments this year and changes this year based on student needs, especially in the EC. And so what that has allowed us to do is, again, based on student needs, combine classes at one school to be able to cover more high needs at another school, and allow all needs still being served while with a certified teacher. Other things that we've done as far as filling the vacancies is we are really, we have teacher assistants that are meeting weekly and getting their name on the list based on funding to join our TA to teacher program. We have, since the beginning of the year, we've had several that have the TA for a teacher right now while they're working on certification unless we can fill a certified vacancy. But we've also have hired non-certified staff that are eligible for a license as a classroom coordinator with Elevate. So they've had a semester or a couple of months to work with the certified teacher that is teaching asynchronously, synchronously on the screen, and they've been able to really study under them. And now because they're eligible for a license, they're transitioning into vacancies, and that has been helpful to give them some confidence as well as the desire to go into that role. We've had several retirees that are returning to fill vacancies. You'll see that on the personnel report tonight, and I still have a call out for another one also. Let's see what else. In our student support services, we have 8 student interns, 3 under psychologist and 5 under speech and OT this year. So that is a lot, and hopefully just getting them here, we'll be able to, once they've completed their program, we will be able to hire them, because we do have positions always in our student services area. Our OTs and our now employed OTs, speech and psychologists are phenomenal, taking this extra, because not that it's a burden, but it is additional work for them, having the student intern work under them. We have a current student teacher at one of our schools. She's been offered, she's on the personnel report tonight as a licensed teacher as well. So that are all definitely positives. One of the things that, as far as the retention in our schools, are teachers having to cover during planning periods. That has been very stressful, as it was in the 21-22 school year. Last year, we were able to provide compensation for teachers in that were covering, and we would pay them by the amount of time they spent covering during their planning period. So that is something that we have been looking at. I began pulling the data over the last 4 weeks from the schools, and this is with the middle schools and the high school, because of the elementary school, our TAs that are already in place do cover. Absences are not only for vacancies if they're not filled, they are for illnesses with teachers being out. As I'm sure you all are aware that flu is going around and colds going around and those kinds of things. So we're having to pull our teachers. Last year at this time, we had spent, total to date, we have spent $100,000 on substitutes. We have budgeted right at $230,000 for, so if we continue at the rate we're going, we're gonna be over budget anyway. So in looking at compensating, we did pull last year from local funding. We were able, was it ESSER funds? No. It was just local, yeah, that's right, okay. So we're looking at funding for that. We would have to look to see about the compensation for that. But I think that would help teachers as far as the load that they're carrying right now. They're burned out. I'm sure you're hearing that. Another thing that we're looking at with the budgeted amount of substitute money that we have is looking at a staffing for substitutes, where they are able to offer benefits. They're able to pay substitutes weekly. They're able to offer incentives, whereas the district is not. The vendor that we have talked to, they're in how many districts, Tracy?
20 some, yes.
Currently. What is different, and the vendor actually said to us, y'all's fill rate is actually better than what we've seen, and it is, but it's not 100%. So whenever it's not 100%, we're pulling from our own teachers inside the building, but we are working at that as far as retention piece. Other things of retention, I know that Ms. Clayton goes out and she takes goodies to the schools. She rotates what school she's taking to. That may sound like a small gesture, but a teacher walking into a break room with a McDonald's apple pie on the table, it helps just a little bit. It doesn't make them say or anything, but it's just, hey, thank you, things like that. With our EC teacher assistants, we've had to hire several one-on-ones with that. We have had to make that position look at driving the bus to be able to pull candidates in for specific positions that we're not sure that will continue next year. So we're able to waive that that requirement. That has been a way to get those positions filled. Mentoring, Ms. Scruggs is working closely with our mentoring program to make sure, to ensure that our baby teachers, as I like to call them, are feeling supported, letting them know that, are helping them with planning. We have rolled out, as far as our new employees, we've rolled out very intensive training plan or orientation plan, getting them, even though they're hired on Monday, they may not be in the classroom, leaving the classroom until a couple weeks in, and they will have somebody with them, an instruction coach with them, helping them getting their feet wet and just ensuring that they're not going to flounder and walk out. I could go on and on about the things that we're doing day to day. Are there specific questions?
Is there anything else that stands out from either exit interviews or just like feedback from current teachers besides the, having to fill in?
The most recent exit interview I had, was surprisingly, it was being questioned constantly from parents or stakeholders of what they were doing. It hasn't been like the job itself, it is the, I guess, the number of the meetings and those kinds of things. One thing that we have been looking at as a district, and it's not gone anywhere because of the number of questions, is we're trying to look at different ways that we can still meet the North Carolina school calendar laws and try to provide flexibility with teachers. And so we're doing baby steps of that. I mean, not steps, but baby stages of that, just to see what we can do to help, not necessarily lessen the load, but to allow time to complete the things that teachers need to complete. I think that the needs that our students bring to us day to day have greatened the demands, of course, on teachers.
I think the only other question I have is what is ultimately what's the expectation from this role, this recruitment retention role that Ms. Clayton is in, besides the taking treats to schools, what else would be expected in the retention side?
So she has sent out, when we worked out a survey, and we took applications of people that were interested in applying for the recruitment retention team. So she has a team, and I need to get with her as far as when her first meeting is going to be. So R&R team will start up within the next 4 weeks. And as far as recruiting, we haven't been able to recruit, and we were not recruiting really before that as much. But we are working with our regional personnel administrators, and as far as recruiting and having more fairs and bringing people to the area. So I know she's working with closely with the president of that organization as far as planning her recruiting trips and things like that.
Lori, excuse me, that
Yeah, sure.
meeting's next week. The first R&R meeting is next week.
It's next week. Okay. And we had a really big turnout as far as the applications with that. So that was exciting.
I will give you an update on some recruitment. I met with UNC on Tuesday. Do I? No, I've got it on my paper to say. I did meet with them, and they have a donor that wants to give money. They want to give money to new teachers to get them out of the core metro areas and get them to rural communities. And part of our partnership with CCA is them partnering with us to do it. There's two sides to this. There's the donor side, and then there would be a commitment side to us. But what the donor wants to do is to encourage those students at UNC graduating or doing internships to do those outside of Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Wake, the Durhams of the world, and come to rural communities. And so what this donor wants to do is provide stipends for year 1, 2, and 3 to entice new teachers to come to rural communities. The first year, a new teacher would get $3,000. The second year, a teacher would get $4,000, and then the next year, the third year, which would be the possible tenure year, no, that's fourth year, would be $5,000. What they're asking us to do in an agreement would be, okay, if our donor gives 3, would we be willing to do 1 the first year, 2 the second year, and then 3 the last year? So that's all about trying to get teachers to start looking at rural communities. On top of the bonus structures that UNC wants to offer to their graduates is also a travel stipend of $2,000 a year. because when they did their feedback inside of their school, it's all about where people want to live. And so what they're saying is, okay, you can live in Durham or you can live in Chapel Hill, and we're going to pay you to drive to the rural communities. And then the other big piece about the retention side is that they want to work with us to enhance and have a more robust teacher prep or teacher first year teacher program, and they want to pay half of our teacher new teacher support fee, but they also want to provide some support in-house for those people that are part of that. The donor also wants to take it a step further and wants to start an assistant principal program, and they would get paid a stipend to be a part of a training program that they would do with multiple counties like us. So I tentatively agreed to it on Tuesday. I told them I wanted to see it on paper, so obviously we can review it. So they're putting it together. That's the first part. The second part is that we have a wonderful community college, if nobody knows that. And I think we utilize the college to as much as we can. What we also have at the college is a teacher program. And we're meeting on Monday. Is 12th a Monday or is that Tuesday? We're meeting on Monday to finalize an agreement where you can go through the college's PCC's 2+2 program and then be enrolled at UNC and go through their teacher prep program free, with the idea that you come back here and teach. And so that will be open to 15 students. So in the next 3 or 4 years, we could have a possibility of having 15 new teachers coming back to Person County. Because what we do know is if you live here and you're from here, you what? You stay here. So the idea around Teach for Person is what it's going to be called. The whole idea is to entice our young folks to go into teaching and to come back and give back to community through the avenue of teaching. When we finalize this, and hopefully all this comes to y'all in January, what I would love to see is our retired teacher organization, and facilitating one of the scholarships through the Pacer Promise, so that our students that are over there can go obviously debt free. If they're one of our kids, they're going to be debt free. But this will help support that 2+2 program. I think this is a magnificent opportunity to get students back. And what we do know, like I said earlier, the 72% that are from here that teach here, they don't go anywhere. And so that would be an avenue that we'll be looking at. And then they would be eligible for the bonus because they would be a UNC graduate. So very happy that there's a donor out there looking at rural education and wants to facilitate that through UNC. I'm more excited that through our partnership with CCA that they want to partner with us to do that. And our target area for the bonuses will be the middle school and high school. Try to help encourage those secondary teachers at UNC to come here. And so hopefully in the spring we'll have some folks from down there coming up here. And maybe if we can get, what we do know too is if we get people here, we have a pretty good chance of keeping them here. And there's just something about the community that just keeps people here. So main job is to get them here first. So I think we're really taking the HR side and taking the recruitment phase. Obviously, we want to look at our retention too. But I want to say what I said in one of my meetings the other day. We've got to figure out a way to let teachers teach. That's what they came into the profession for, and we got to get out of the legislative things that we're required to do that may or may not, well, in my opinion, don't have a necessarily impact on student achievement. It's a to-do check-off. But that's my personal opinion, and I'll leave it at that. But what we're planning to do is, and this is part of my to-do list, is if whatever we can take off a teacher, we need to start looking at it. And but like I've said this earlier too, every person that's hired in Raleigh, they got to have a job, and that job, they bring what with them? More to do. And I did remind a state official the other day when I had a conversation with her, is we're not Wake and we're not Johnston, we're not Durham. We don't have 45 people in central office to do things. And they need to, and sometimes I think they lose sight of that, especially when they get into Big 12 group and they start talking about things that the Big 12 group can do. Don't extrapolate that over to all the rural communities that have low population and think that they can do that too. So that's my 2 cents on that. Sorry I got on the soapbox, but any other questions on retention recruitment? I think there's some exciting things. We just got to get it there and get it on paper and finalize it. But if nothing else, I recommend the board go into closed session for personnel and student. We do have student reassignment tonight, so.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Vote. Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mrs. Stewart?
Aye.
Mr. Torian?
Aye.
Mr. Gillis? We will now go into closed session. Tillett? Aye. Mr. Torian?
Aye.
Mr. Gillis?
Aye.
I think this all approved as presented. Now, at this time, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Mrs. Bratcher?
Aye.
Mrs. Tillett? Aye. Mr. Torian?
Aye.
Mr. Gillis?
Aye.
By majority vote, this meeting is adjourned on December the 12th. And we'd like to say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.